Hey, practice owners. We are back for another edition of Coming Back Stronger. I'm very excited to have another longtime friend of the Profitable Dentist magazine, Dr. Steve Katz of Smile Potential. He's a dentist. He's an awesome coach. He's a golfer, as you might tell behind you or from behind him. And he was telling me earlier. I'm going to let you tell the story of the what's behind me here. I was telling Dr. Katz, I have my little I love dentist sign here that somebody hung on the wall. And earlier this week, I did a video about the books that I have that are on my shelves. And so I said, I'll just do somebody would say, what's that book or what's this book? And you have a different story. When you do a webinar, you get emails too, right?
I do. Got quite a few of them.
Yeah. About what's behind you on your wall?
Yeah, so I get quite a few emails that say, tell me about your balls on the wall. And so just to clarify, that is the collection of golf balls from all the golf courses I've played, 285 of them.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Well, and that's, I did here in Indiana here, right outside of Louisville, we can't go out. I think we're quarantined, but you can still play golf. So I have friends who have taken full advantage of the confusing part of that rule.
Well, I do consider that an essential service.
Right, the golf, yeah. and it can be. So, well, I also wanted to share that your book. They didn't teach us that in dental school, and they can get anybody who's watching. They can still get this, right?
Absolutely.
They get it from you. They can get it. Can you
it's
get
on
it online?
Amazon?
Amazon? Awesome.
Just email me and I can get you a copy of it too.
Great book. It is, I think, we were talking earlier about this connection that dentists have with dentists. And that's one of the things that I've always felt we did very well here at the Profitable Dentist. Dr. Woody Oakes, when he started it, he sort of saw it as dentists helping dentists be better practice owners. And, we talked a little bit earlier about how the dentist mindset is one thing, the practice owner mindset is a different thing. A lot of times those things are in conflict and a lot of times they work together. Sometimes not so well and sometimes really well. And you've been very successful at sort of marrying those two. And in a time like this, your practice owner mindset kind of takes over because number one, you're not seeing patients. And number two, you really have got to focus on the fundamental business functions of your practice, the cash flow. Do teams come back? Do teams not come back? How to talk to them about filing unemployment, things that have nothing to do with the patient side of it. So, which can create a lot of stress and anxiety to somebody who went to school for 4 years to do dentistry and really just wants to see patients. So I appreciate you coming on. I was hoping you could kind of share that insight. It also turns out you're in New York, so you have a little bit of insight on maybe the seriousness of the situation we're in and the light at the end of the tunnel, and maybe just dive in there.
Sure. Well, we've been doing a lot of webinars, and I've had a lot of doctors who have been in touch with me through the years, whether it presentations, lectures, dental meetings, who have reached out to me because they know that I relate to what's going on right now. Mm-hmm. As you know, Steve, I lost my practice completely about 20 years ago to a series of life tragedies. And it was a difficult time. I was out of work for 2 years. But I learned back then that you have the choice to either let these challenges make you bitter or better. Mm. And so when I had my accident and I was out for, as I said, 2 years, multiple surgeries, it was a difficult time. I viewed it as an opportunity to prepare for what I wanted to do when I could get back to work. So it meant taking as much CE as I could. At the time, it wasn't online. It was books and videos and reading all the journals, reading Profitable Dentist and reading the Richards Report from Manos way back then. So it was doing everything I could to learn. It was setting a vision of what I truly wanted my practice to be like. It was surrounding myself with the people that I wanted to be part of that dream along with me, and training them not just in dentistry, but in psychology and sales and getting us primed so that when we came back, there was complete clarity in what we wanted to do. And that preparation enabled us to take advantage of a real opportunity of preparation that most people didn't have back then. Mm-hmm. What's going on now is everyone has that opportunity. Right. There are some who are walking around saying, let's see what's going to happen. There are some saying, what happened? Mm-hmm. And there are some that are saying, I'm going to make it happen. Mm-hmm. And investing that time on a daily basis, you know, one of the things we've talked about is spending at least 2 hours a day reaching out to your patients, just saying, hi, how are you? Is everything okay? If they start talking about the difficulties that's going on and the horrors that they're hearing and seeing, especially here in New York, focus on what can be, what will be, all the good things that can go on moving forward. You know, history gives us all a sense of optimism. And what we need to realize is through our careers, we've created relationships that are going to, the loyalty from those relationships is going to make it possible for our teams to function at a higher level. It's going to make it so that our patients who have developed that trust and loyalty will trust that we're doing the right thing and our teams are doing the right thing to protect them. And that confidence will enable them to take advantage of the services that we can provide in a safe way, in a methodical way, and complying with what some of the new standards of care and precautions will be.
So I got a quick question for you. I wrote down here as you were talking. I think you're right on. 2 hours a day, just call patients, probably does a lot of things. Number one, you're doing something in your practice. And I think if you're all cut up now on all, I don't know, 29 seasons of Game of Thrones or however many there are, and you've cut the grass as many times as you can cut it, and you've done all those things, it's time to sort of get back to your practice. So the question really is, if you're going to dedicate those 2 hours, I know a lot of docs get into sort of a habit of letting the team do that. So, you know, they don't make calls. And maybe they did early on. So maybe that's a part B of the question is you did it early on when you were starting your practice. Maybe this is starting over. Instead of delegating it to your team, you recommend the docs just as to dive back in, start calling your patients, having some kind of communication. Don't overthink it. Don't overscript it. Just talk to your patients.
Sure. And, you know, you can have your teams creating that priority list of the patients that you want to get in to start off most productively right off the way. And those are the calls that your team makes. But the reason patients come to a practice is because of the doctor. Mm-hmm. And even offices with a great team, that relationship with the doctor is the most important. Mm-hmm. I don't care what your trade is. And dentistry is a trade. We use our hands. Mm-hmm. But you can have the most skillful tradesman, but the skill is not, the spool is merely the toolbox. Mm-hmm. What's going to solidify success is relationships and how you communicate. And so the doctor's calls in this regard should be nothing about the appointment, nothing about the treatment plan, nothing about the work that needs to be done. These phone calls are just relationship building. I was thinking about you this morning while I was having my morning coffee, and I said, I have to give you a call, Mrs. Jones. How are you doing? And how's your husband? I know that he had some health problems in the past. How is he doing? Is everybody in your family safe? Anything that you need. And, there are we treat a lot of elderly patients. Many of them are alone. They can't see their families. One of the doctors that we work with sent us the audio tape of a phone call, a return phone call to one of his calls. And the woman was in tears, crying about how touched she was that he thought to just connect with her. And she said she had to get off the phone before she couldn't control herself. Number one, with joy for what he did, but in sadness that some others didn't make the same attempt. So these connections are what's going to drive success down the road. And it's not just with patients. You know, here in New York, we may not get back till late June, July, the way it's looking now. We're hopeful for June, but you know, it doesn't look likely. Well, make sure you're securing your relationship with your team as well. Are you calling every member of your team every week to just say, hi, how are you? What about having a Friday night happy hour with your team using Zoom and just creating something that's fun? What about doing things to reach out to your team, asking them if they need anything? How about sending, one of our doctors told us that he sent the pizza pie to every member of his team on Friday before the happy hour. And it was just great. And these are the things I remember when you know, one of the questions that we're always asked at programs that we give is, how do I motivate my team? How do I get them to do the things that they should be doing without me having to push them along? Why don't they just get it? And the problem is that too many doctors, and you mentioned the doctor mindset, are asking the wrong question. The question that you should be asking yourself isn't, how do I motivate my team? Because motivation is an internal phenomenon. If you try to motivate somebody, you're manipulating them. So you have to create internal motivation. That means taking away the things that people find dissatisfying and adding to the things that they find satisfying. So what about using this time period to have very, very positive team evaluations, you know, performance evaluations, and making it where you encourage them, you give them confidence, that you pump them up. And yes, if there's something you want them to work on, concentrate on, cushion that. Make it like the Oreo. Dr. Gurr, who's the psychologist who we work with in our coaching program for practices, talks about the Oreo, where when somebody comes to you, you say, you know, Joan, you are doing a great job in making phone calls. I'd like you to change some of the verbiage so that it's a little more patient-centric, but you are doing a great job. And so that Oreo of give them the acknowledgement and the praise, insert the cream, which is the little bit of an improvement you want, but then go back to the praise. And if we could be doing that ongoing with our teams, I know we have an incredible team evaluation form that any of your listeners are welcome to, readers are welcome to, Steve, that allows you to have evaluations done more in a conversational way than sort of the checklist and grading system.
Okay. No, that's so there's a lot of meat there. I think the team, I always like to say that, you know, your team, especially now, how do I want to phrase it? You know, I think what dentists don't understand, or somebody who went to dental school and has this team, you're the practice owner. You really care about this. I always say you're going to be there the first day your practice opens and the last day. You're the only person. Now, you might be lucky enough and have a good team that comes along with you, but with absolute certainty, it's just you. Now, how can you change that? And to them, it's a paycheck every 2 weeks, even though they love you, so here's a test. They love you. They're committed to the practice. They believe all these things. Ask them to miss a paycheck or two. And, you know, that's a tough thing. And one or two might, but most of them doesn't mean they don't love you and care, but they're there because of the paycheck every 2 weeks. You're there because you want to build a career, build a practice, sell it one day, retire, and, you know, buy a boat or an RV. Doesn't mean those things are in conflict, but what it means is your need is the overall profitability and value building of the practice. Theirs is their career as a hygienist and a paycheck every 2 weeks and a bonus once in a while and a fun and enjoyable place to work. And
but the challenge is bringing those things together.
Yes,
because we deal with practices where we're hearing some doctors say, my team doesn't want to come back because they're making more money on unemployment.
Right.
And then we have others where they're talking about the team members can't wait to get back. So that to me is a culture issue. And culture either happens on purpose or by accident, but it can be intentional. So this is an opportunity to build culture so that you have developed that internal motivation that we just spoke about in your team, that they want you to be successful as much as you want it for yourself.
Right. And the more successful the practice that they love is, the longer they get to work there. And, that is that really is a sort of an attitude that you bring and can cultivate. The other thing is, I've heard docs that have told me, and I'll have this conversation, well, how often are you communicating with your team? And they said, well, we shut down. I talked to them when the unemployment was, kind of done. And I think Mary Jane, the office manager, she emails them once a week to make sure, they know we care. And, I'll talk to them when we get ready to come back. That's a long stretch. And I'd like, your thoughts on that. I just think that's a bad idea.
Sure. I want a team that is so dedicated to not my vision, but our vision. Mm-hmm. And that's a big part of creating a practice vision, making sure that it's the leader's challenge. Develop a vision, have a team that buys into it so that they feel it's their own. And now just lead it with positive energy. Mm-hmm. Great book by John Gordon, The Energy Bus. That is, everybody's off right now. Go on Amazon, get that book or get the digital version. Everyone who reads that book and has nothing to do with dentistry can relate to one of the characters in it. And when you see yourself in there, it shows you the way to creating positive energy and then getting it in line with a vision so that you can move forward. And that's what we all have to be doing at this point in time. We have to be looking forward, because if we dwell on what's going on now, especially here in New York and what has been, and all the players involved in making the decisions, mm-hmm. you can drive yourself nuts. Then we have to bring our team psychologist in to deal with it. But there's so much that we can focus on that's positive. And if we look forward, if limit the amount of news that you watch every day, instead of mm-hmm. being glued to CNN or Fox or MSNBC, whatever you watch, spend that time with relationships. And there's nothing that you can do that's more valuable than that.
I've seen people who do, and maybe this helps get over the hurdle a little bit. I've seen docs who have tried Zoom meetings. And I always say, and I'll tell you sort of my experience with Zoom. My dad's 80. He lives in South Florida. And, he's sort of, he's quarantined like crazy down there. And, we brought this idea up of a Zoom meeting. And, so he says, what's that? You kind of explain, well, it's this video thing. And I'm sure in his mind, it's like, Dick Tracy in a video, whatever his watch was. And, and he was so resistant, and it was too complicated. He wasn't sure how he'd do it. He had all these stumbling blocks. We had 3 training sessions, Steve, for my dad, just to figure out on an iPad how to use it. Took a lot of patience. It took a lot of, okay, put the app on. What's an app? How do I get the app? Well, you go over here. What's your Apple? What's my Apple ID? Well, what is that? I don't know. So it took us about 3 hours, 3 1-hour sessions. We finally got it up. We did our first one at 4:30 on a Sunday and had about 16 nieces, my nieces and nephews, kids, grandkids, great-grandkids. And the minute we were done, my dad called me and he said, are we doing one next week? And we figured it out. So now it's our Sunday afternoon ritual. And, one of my nieces got engaged, so she can announce it to the whole family, and now it's gotten a little bit bigger. She can announce it to everybody and show a ring. And it has become this thing. Now, the first one was maybe an hour and a half because it was, everybody's popping in and out and figuring it out. Now it's probably about 30 minutes. And everybody, says, I'm doing fine. The interesting thing is, people of my vintage, my brothers and I, we stare at the camera. Our kids, they'll make something to eat. They'll make a sandwich. They'll sit down and eat. They'll disappear, go to the bathroom. I don't know what they do. Come back. They're always talking. They're hearing it. And it's part of the way they do it. And I think my point to that is, if you're a doc who is struggling with that, if you're late 50s, 58, and you think, well, it's not something you can delegate. You can't say Mary Jane will take care of staying in touch with the team. I think you have to learn it and you have to do it. And you have
I know we had Passover and our family Seder we had to teach all the elderly relatives how to use it. And now they're using it regularly. some of the things I've seen, other things online with various things that I've applied it to how you could do it for dental practices. That is, some of the larger offices employ a lot of young women who have small children.
Right.
What about the doctor getting on and having a story time for all the kids of the employees? What about having one Zoom call with your team where everybody has their dog on their lap? And if they don't have a dog, they have their favorite stuffed animal. Just doing some things that are fun to replace the team building type of activities that you do when you don't have to observe social distancing.
Well, and you're letting people into your world. You know, this is your life. I mean, we do a lot of them where people are at home, and you know, people will say, so what's that back there? Oh, that's my, you know, whatever it is, that's my golf ball collection. And you know, somebody says, I didn't know you played golf. So it really is letting people get to know each other in a way that when you come back, you might find that what you just said earlier is very appropriate. You strengthen those relationships, and they see you as a regular person. Because
a fun conversation, and we've done this many times. When we have one of our first meetings with a coaching office, is to go around the room and ask each member of the team, tell us something about yourself that the rest of your team would be surprised to hear.
Okay.
And you get some fascinating things that come up in those conversations.
Well, and that is a way that suddenly everybody knows that you collect Hummels, or, you know, whatever you know, you run marathons, and that is a great contrast to somebody who says, we're going to keep it strictly business. You know, we'll let you know when we're coming back. And you're right. I've heard that same thing. We opened dental practices open in Indiana yesterday, and there are a lot of team members who are grumbling because, with the extra, what is it, $600 a week, they're making more staying home than working. And if they have young kids, which a lot of your staff does, they're homeschooling. Their kids aren't going back to school. So suddenly it becomes a situation where they do the math and say, you know, I'm just going to stick it out through August and see what happens. And, you know, if my job's still there when, you know, when I'm finished with unemployment, I'll give you a call. If not, you know, I'm a dental assistant, I'll find a job somewhere. I think you want to avoid that as as the way they approach it. Yeah.
This is a chance to re-break the ice with everybody in your life.
Okay.
So with your team, it's re-breaking the ice on relationships. When you get back to your practices, this is an opportunity to break the ice all over again with your patients. Some of your patients are way beyond what their normal recall would be. Right. Some of them have, and so what we would recommend is every patient that comes in, give them the new patient experience. Because in just about every practice, there is nothing more thorough than the new patient exam and the new patient interactions. And so do that all over again, and make this a new beginning for you with your team, make it a new beginning for you and your patients. And when you look at your patients as comprehensively as you do in a new patient exam, you're going to start to see areas where your patients can derive benefit from your care more than the typical cursory checkup exam. So, and that's something that's going to be really, really important moving forward, because with a lot of the changes in, you know, the last time universal precautions were changed were around the time that I was starting out in practice in the early 80s with the AIDS epidemic.
Right.
Universal precautions are going to be changing right now. It's not going to be where we can fly into a room and fly out, you know, quickly. And, you know, we're going to have to make sure that our PPE is in line with seeing another patient and another patient. So it behooves us to really try to see how we can start to ramp up the comprehensive approach to treating patients. And in order to do that, you have to look at them comprehensively first in order to plan out treatment, not just do it one tooth at a time, one filling at a time, even one crown at a time, but to plan it so that you have one patient in the room for extended periods of time, and you get as much dentistry done as possible at each sitting without changing over the room 100 times a day.
Well, you also have patients who have a whole new, maybe vocabulary that they didn't have 8 weeks ago. You know, I was in an industry for years, telecommunications, that PPE was a huge thing. You know, there were electrical hazards and, you know, all these different things. And so it was just part of the world. And in dentistry, you know, you knew about PPE, maybe the minimums or whatever worked and whatever you evolved to. But today, your patients come in, unless they've been living under a rock, they know what PPE is. They may not know the details, but they know it exists. They've you know, Steve, how many people do you think 8 weeks ago knew the term dental aerosols? Today, I promise, it's one of the top trending terms on like Google. Your patients are coming in, they know the term dental aerosols, and whether they say it or not, they're looking around thinking, okay, how are they dealing with it? So yeah, that's kind of a great idea. Maybe you are reintroducing yourself and your practice, and you know, phrase things like, we've always been very conscious of infection control, but we're adding this and adding this. And so suddenly, without them looking around, they feel comfortable. They see Dr. Katz and they're okay. And we can all get back to that normal quicker.
It sort of points out our basic instincts of avoidance of pain and desire for health. And health is number one on everybody's mind right now. I don't think as a society, we have been more in tune with what it takes to be healthy and stay healthy than ever before. It's you know, social distancing, quarantining, seclusion, all of that. And so it really sets up another opportunity where to re-emphasize the oral systemic connection in your practices. Yeah. And, you know, as patients come in, we're going to be checking their temperature with a little, thermometer, a contactless thermometer. We're going to be asking them to disinfect their hands. Well, why don't we start upping the game with taking blood pressures? Why don't we start talking about the oral systemic connection? One of the things that I describe in our seminars and I work with our clients was how great it was in my office that we could develop a large component of physician-referred patients as our source of new patients. And one of the things that we did, and this came from working with an incredible team of hygienists, one of whom Lucrezia is a coach with our company now, was that we noticed that a lot of patients, when they come into hygiene, and especially now after sitting around for a long period of time, their gums bleed. And the patients whose gums bled the most were the ones who had diabetes. So we thought about, why not use this as an opportunity to screen our patients for elevated blood sugar? And then when we realized that we were getting a tremendous number, and we're going to have it a lot with people being so sedentary now for an extended period of time and maybe not caring for themselves and maybe eating the wrong things, as you were talking about with Uchi and your session with him, that this is going to be an increased problem in our society. So what we did was, after we saw that we could screen people for diabetes in a very crude way, but it wasn't with fasting or anything. It was just a screening. Same way when we're checking for oral cancer, we're not diagnosing, we're screening. Right. But then I went to the local endocrinologist and I said, we routinely screen for diabetes. May we refer our patients to your practice? And of course, they were elated. Yeah. They said, great. Now, a good endocrinologist will require three things of his or her patients. That they see an ophthalmologist once a year, that they see a podiatrist once a year, and that they see a dentist once a year. Now, if you're the dentist in your community who's screening for the disease that makes up the largest percentage of their patients, who's the dentist that they're going to refer to? Yeah. Who's the dentist that they're going to refer to who they're concerned with their patient reaction to being on bisphosphonates? It's the dentist that they know has the greatest awareness of health in general. So that oral systemic connection can be a huge driver of practice success moving forward. And again, looking to the future, not looking back at what we've done up till now.
No, that is spot on. In fact, that, you know, in the idea of coming back stronger, if you're not going to open till June or July, you know, again, you've got, you know, and you only have the last 3 seasons of Game of Thrones to catch up on. Skip that, or you have your afternoon, you know, CNN over here, Fox News over here, Netflix in the middle. Scratch that, and do some research on the oral systemic connection. And I've seen a lot of practices expand dramatically and incrementally by learning this. They're excited to do it. Patients love it. And I guarantee you, going forward, your patients understand there's a connection between their health and the dental office. And it kind of makes it a little bit more fun to practice dentistry, I would think.
And what's the level of respect for you as a healthcare practitioner now, not just the tooth doctor?
Right.
When they realize that you are looking them as an entire individual, not just focusing on, you know, 3 cubic inches.
Right. Right. Somebody said you work in an area the size of a baseball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well,
and that area is 3 inches from your brain and 8 inches from your heart, and there's a strong connection.
I'm going to write that down. I'm going to save that. And those are the things I think that have come out of this series that we've done. You know, I get a lot of emails every morning, a lot of texts and a lot of messages that talk about just that a lot of the practice owners who happen to be dentists out there, 86% of whom who are dentists, appreciate that somebody's speaking to them like that, and not really high up here, you know, where they feel like they need an MBA to figure out the math of it all. So I appreciate that. Well, I noticed our clock here. I want to make sure we got in a sort of a last thought that you had.
I would like to just impress on everybody that our patients coming back have been through difficult times, especially here in New York. Many have lost jobs. Many haven't had income. Many of them are going to not be able to afford copays when they have insurance. And so this is an opportunity to really show how much you care. And, you know, people don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. This is your opportunity to show you care and give back to your community. If there are people that lost their jobs, don't hold them back from having their hygiene visits if they can't afford to come in. Let them come in. Care for them. Take care of them. Everybody's going to get back on their feet. You know, there's lots of stimulus money out there. It's going to filter down eventually. Because we're all in this together. We're all going to get through it together. And there's comfort in numbers. And when people realize that you were the one who money wasn't the factor in whether you cared for them, that's going to be something that they're going to remember, and that's going to go a long way to your future success. So I guess the final thing is look forward, give back, be positive, be safe, and stay well.
Very, very wise words. And anybody who, you know, I don't even think, did you know I had this when you, when we talked?
I did not know it until I saw it on your bookshelf in that little video you did.
I have so many books. This is one of my all-time favorite ones. You know, we talked about it beforehand. As somebody who went to business school, I expect these things. I expect recessions, and, you know, so you plan for that. You know, you don't know when it is or how big it's going to be or whatever. But if you're smart, you plan ahead for that. You keep a cushion. I expect markets to change. I expect in business, we call it external risks. You have internal risks and you have external risks. And the external risks are things like a coronavirus. Now, this is a big one, wasn't on anybody's radar screen, but things like, you know, industry changes or technology changes, they will impact your business. You always have to be adapting. You just don't know to what and when, but you build your adapting skills. In dentistry, they don't teach you that. They teach you, you know, wherever you went to. What's interesting to me is wherever you went to dental school and what year and whoever the professors were, that is the best way to do whatever that procedure is. Best way to do a crown is the way we learned it at, you know, Iowa State in 1987. And, you know, that's a challenge if that's how you grew up and that's how you were trained. And I love the title. They didn't teach us that in dental school. And
If you might want to point out, the first chapter of that book is what they taught us in dental school. And just show the first couple of pages of that chapter.
You had introduction. You've got here section 1, what they taught you in dental school about how to manage a practice.
Right. Go to the next page.
See, there you go. And that's right. When I speak on, and it keeps going. I speak on the dentist mindset and the practice owner mindset, and I cannot tell you how many docs I'll just pick and I'll say, tell me what you remember about business from dental school. And one of my friends, Dr. Emily Letran, we were actually in a car one day. We were having this conversation. We were going to dinner with some other people. And I asked her that, and she said, I never thought about that. But she said, the only thing I can actually remember is HMO stands for Health Maintenance Organization. That's all. And I said, you got to be kidding me. And she goes, no, I really can't think of anything else. And she tried. And, so it's become a joke over the years. But I've had a lot of docs who will tell me, I know I took 3 classes. I know I did this. I understand P&L means profit and loss. And it'll be that simple. It'll be one little thing. And so that's the challenge right now is when you're faced with all the stuff, teams and taxes and, loans and financing and cash flows, there are a lot of docs who never, ever, ever wanted to do this. And so you've been a great source of sort of lifting up. I love what you said. I wrote down here, get bitter or better. And I think that's spot on. So appreciate that.
I'm about relationships. So if anybody has any questions who've been watching this today, my email is drkatz@smilepotential.com. My cell phone is 516-524-7573. I love to chat. I like to relate. The relationships are the most important thing to me.
Well, it doesn't get any better than that. And that's one of the things we appreciate. And the reason I thought of you first and reached out is you're always very generous with your time, and especially a colleague, somebody who's struggling. You're always very generous to say, I've lived through it, and you have a great story. It's in the book. You literally have sort of lived through this, lose it all and get it all back. So anybody who's listening, I would encourage you to reach out to Dr. Katz. So
thank you so much for this opportunity, Steve. This has been wonderful.
You're one of my favorite people, and we've I know we've chatted before when we're out, and dentistry is a very unique industry. There are a lot of I always call it a mom and pop industry. There's really good people in it, and sometimes the business side just overwhelms them. So I appreciate you coming on and sharing your insights, at least about that.
Be well.
So practice owners, that's it for this edition of Coming Back Stronger. Hope you got a lot out of it. If you didn't catch how to get a hold of Dr. Katz, you can just reach out to us at The Profitable Dentist, and we will definitely make sure you're connected. So with that, we'll draw this one to a close. I'm Steve Parker. Dr. Katz, thank you, and see you next time.
Good seeing you.